just a short disclaimer before we start this video. Shane's audio cuts out occasionally, but most of the time you can hear him, so yeah, there wasn't much we could do about it just because of technical issues, but anyway, enjoy. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Supercars Exchange podcast. I'm joined as always by Shane. How you going, Shane?
Oh, mate, I'm pretty good.
You sound pretty good for something so controversial just happening.
I'm excited. I can't wait to talk about this.
We've just found out that the Mustang is going to be trimmed back on their Aero, and we've tried to be for the Perth round. We've tried to be as equal as possible on this podcast. I know Shane's a bit of a Ford guy, and I'm a bit of a Holden guy, but like both of us are very upset about this. This is just a very weird decision by Supercars. So, Shane, would you like to voice your opinion?
Oh, well, I guess we probably knew it was coming, really. There's been that much blow up about it. I've never seen a car. We touched on controversial cars a couple of weeks ago, how much blow up there was about the old Skyline back in the day. This one is just for shit stirring.
Yeah.
And it, I'm going to sound like I'm Roland Dane bashing, but he's been the biggest advocate for changes to the Mustang.
Yeah.
And it's because he's in charge of Triple Eight, and they're the team that's had the dominance for so many years. They've only lost 3 championships in more than a decade.
Yeah.
But now they clearly don't have a car that's as fast. And again, so much of that comes down to the twin springs. We've seen in Phillip Island that they were like half a second slower in qualifying than what they were last year. So they've got their own issues to stop the Mustang from winning. So their protests have obviously worked. I know a lot of the other teams were upset about it as well, but they weren't coming out as publicly, at least, as much and voicing their opinions about it. I said in a couple of podcasts ago that they tried to shut the gate after the horse had bolted, and instead what they've actually done is shot the horse. So now that's official. Now that they've made these changes after 4 races, that they've gone up. We're changing it. We're going to pull you back in. The gate shouldn't have been opened. If they thought that there might have been too much of an issue, then it should never have been allowed to happen in the first place. Like they've, that's the bit I just don't get, is that it was a legal car. It was 100% a legal car. I know I'm just sounding like a sore loser Ford fan, but I know a lot of Holden fans that are Supercars fans, and all of them have said the same thing of, well, Ford's just done a better job. It's up to Holden to try and beat them again. It happens. It's racing. You always want to innovate. You always want to push the boundaries of trying to make a faster car. And the Supercars have had they've got their limits on what you can do. They've got their rules. The Mustang fitted that, and they've decided. But now they've changed it. So that's the bit that annoys me. And as I also said, where do you stop? What are we going to see in Perth? I don't know. They could still be well and truly up to pointy, and they could still be winning the races. We don't know. But there's every chance that they might come out and be all 6 Mustangs might be in the bottom half of the field in Perth. We don't know. It's yet to be seen. We might be blowing up over nothing at this stage. But we might have every reason to, because how do you slow a car down enough? Where, like I said, where do you stop? Where do you stop when you think that they're going to be about it, or do you stop when they're slower? That's the bit that's upset me the most. And like I said, it was a legal car. That's the bit that pisses me off the most.
Yeah. It's a bit like, well, obviously it's a bit more controversial than the centre of gravity debate, but we had to wait to Phillip Island to see whether the centre of gravity affected it. And it didn't affect them massively, but I think the Aero is probably going to affect them a bit more. Obviously, Tickford have been struggling a little bit, not so much like Chaz Mustard, but Cam Waters and Lee Holdsworth, even just in this picture of the article that they're using, you can see Lee Holdsworth way down the field. So Lee Holdsworth has been struggling with it. So you really got to worry about how much that's going to affect him, considering that they're trimming it up so much. But like you were saying beforehand, they haven't considered the Scott McLaughlin factor, as you like to say. The way, like we saw it way back in the Volvo days as well. He's able to pull a car way up further than it is actually able to perform, and he's been doing that this whole time with the Mustang.
Yeah, well, even last year with the Falcon, no other Falcon driver was within cooey of him last year. He won the championship. He managed to pedal that to get it to win the championship. Coulthard was several. I think there might have been one Mustang or one Tickford Falcon in the top 10, maybe. But otherwise, everyone else was outside of it. So, he's obviously a big factor on his own. I don't know. I hope that they're only really going off data.
Yeah.
They've taken that average of all the Holdens and all of the Mustangs. It leaves me baffled that they've made changes mid-season. I would have thought that they would leave it until the end of the year, at the very least. And if it got to the end of the year and they said, "Oh, look, we're going to bring in these changes. There's only so much area that the end plates can have now, and this, that, and the other." I'm okay with that. You've made the changes at the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember Paul Morris and Russell Ingall have a new video, a weekly series out, and it's quite good. This is obviously the number one podcast that you need to listen to. But if you haven't watched I think the Enforcer and Do, I think, is the video series. Paul Morris, between both of them, they made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And Paul Morris, he thought that the Mustang was going to be trimmed back. Thought that they might be moving in a race. But again, it's just, that's the frustrating bit, is it hasn't been Mustangs whitewashing the field. It's only been largely the Penske Mustangs, which obviously that they've got just the better setup over the rest of them. So that's the bit that drives me nuts, is that they've made these changes mid-season. Do they know every bit of data from it? I think they still should have taken it over to the States where they had the perfect wind tunnel. Do that at season's end. If they need to make changes then, sweet, whatever, we'll do it. On the other hand, Paul Morris seems to think that between Ford Performance and DJR, they would have known that their car was really pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
And it was. You can see that the car does look a fair bit different from the regular road-going Mustang. Obviously, there's the obvious ones because the roof has to be higher and all that, but he still thinks that maybe Ford, in particular being the homologation team, knew that, so that there might be 2 or 3 steps ahead of the game. Like they might have already had a different aero package that they knew that, all right, if this one doesn't, if they don't like it and they change it, we've got this one that's still going to be pretty good as well.
Yeah.
So that there might be 2 or 3 steps ahead of the game, is what he was saying, and I thought, well, that's probably true in one regard, because they would have known that they were pushing those boundaries, but again, it was a legal car.
Yeah.
Had those contingencies there if it got pulled back, then they've got the answer to it already.
Yeah, it's everyone. All the Facebook comments are starting to make a little bit more sense now. Everyone just saying it's just it's a bit farcical at this point, isn't it? It's just the fact that they've made, as you were saying, so many changes in the mid-season. Like, center of gravity, despite how much it was blown up, wasn't a massive factor in the end. As we saw at Phillip Island, the cars were just about in the same spots that they were coming in the previous few rounds. But aerodynamics is quite a major factor, and we could easily see the Mustangs just slip backwards, because obviously aerodynamics has an effect at any kind of circuit, really. So it's just we could if we see them slip backwards, what do we do then? Do we revert the changes or what? And that's just so many changes flipping from all these different rules around. It's just far too much to follow, and it's, as like a lot of fans have pointed out, there's just too many rules maybe that are just coming into play. Like you were saying, Ford's just done the better job this year. Holden just have to come back at them next year or try and develop throughout the season to try and catch them. It's just becoming a bit of a farce, I think, at this point.
Yeah, that's it. And like, I just hope that, like the whinging of a few hasn't spoiled it for the rest of us. Like, I really hope that Penske come out in Perth and just smash them.
Yeah.
Like, it would just be the ultimate FU to the grid of, like, you can do whatever you want. It wasn't this, that, or the other. We're still on top. It wouldn't just be the best thing now for one through to like a Ford clean sweep in both races in Perth. Yeah. It would just be the absolute bomb. And like, but then again, what do they do? Does Triple Eight blow up again, saying, "Oh, we haven't done enough"? And it still goes back to that same argument. I'll sound like a broken record, but where do you stop? Like the center of gravity thing. I blew up about that because that was the issue last year, and not a lot was done apart from allowing Ford and Nissan to build their own panels.
Yeah.
Which leveled it up a bit. But as we've seen when they've done the test, they still have to, the Holden still have to put a bit more weight back up to the top of the roof. So they obviously still carried that advantage all of last year, and nothing was done about it, even though teams were, it didn't much as what it has this year, but it was still always a factor. There was still always that, but the Holden have a better car. They've got a purpose-built car where they've gone for that lower center of gravity because they put the composite panels on it. I think the firewall in the back of the car was carbon fiber instead of steel, what it was on the Ford and the Nissan, which, a big piece of steel over the back of the car, where the back seat would be, versus a piece of carbon fiber. Yeah. There's probably 30, 40 kilos difference in weight there, that you can just put on the floor now.
Yeah.
And so, but as much as I wasn't a fan of that, because I thought, well, they had the advantage this year, we've got the advantage this year, play on. They wanted to level it up. Okay, I'll cop it. But Aero is such a different beast altogether, because now you're messing with how a car goes through the air. But the center of gravity, that affects how it goes around corners. You can do little things. You can to change suspension and to make that car still go nearly as fast. But when you start messing with Aero, that's now going to change how fast a car goes around the circuit altogether.
Yeah.
And again, broken record again. Where do you stop? How we won't know until we get to Perth in a week and a bit. But it's I just hope that they haven't gone too far. Like we might see a couple of Holdens win the race if the Penske Mustangs are still up on the podium. Then it's probably all right. Okay, well, at the moment it might seem all right. We'll still have to wait 2 or 3 more races. But yeah, if they've gone too far, could you imagine it now if the Mustangs were suddenly mid-pack and by the end of the year the other teams have chipped the couple of leading Holden teams have chipped away and they win the championship?
Yeah.
Could you imagine the blow up then? Like that, there'll be. You'd have so many Ford fans just go, nah, that's it.
Yeah.
They'll call time on Supercars. They'll lose a lot of fans if the Mustang doesn't go on to win this year's championship.
Yeah, it's also really interesting because I don't really support any particular driver, but I'm more of a Holden person myself. If Holden wins this weekend or wins the championship, it's not gonna feel good because everyone knows that the Mustang was the faster car, and the Commodore shouldn't be winning this championship from what we've seen so far. So it's not gonna feel good. And say if Whincup or Van Gisbergen win the championship, they're probably not gonna feel that great about it in the end. I've also just seen Scott McLaughlin's posted on Facebook. He's shared that article and he said it's just going to feel even better once we win now. So,
Yeah, well, I hope so. I hope that all of the Mustang drivers just go out there with their angry face on and just decimate everyone.
yeah.
I'd love nothing more than when we get to Perth in a week and a half's time and see like Penske 1-2 and then a Monster Mustang in third or Chaz Mostert in third or something like that. That to me, every race now is just going to be even sweeter. Like, every race so far, we've won all but one race. It's been pretty nice, because to have the start that we've had. Every race now, it's just going to feel that a little bit sweeter because there's been that much love about it, and it's like, well, we still just have the better car. But whether we'll still see it.
Yeah, so you just cut out a little bit at the end.
Okay.
That's all right. I still got the gist of it.
Yeah.
But, like, it's, yeah, for really just the hope of the category, I just hope that the Mustang still wins the championship and still wins this weekend, because it's really stepping on a fine line at the moment for supercars, with the fact that the TCR is starting up as soon, and they've got the Australian GT category, and with supercars drivers looking at that as well. If Scott McLaughlin is a very talented driver, as we've already seen, if he gets an offer from a GT3 category or NASCAR or a touring car category, he's probably going to take that rather than put up with really the crap that Supercars has been dealing him so far this season. And you can tell that he's getting fed up with it. No, we're focusing in right on one driver, but he's obviously leading the championship and he's the main Mustang driver. But he's just, I wouldn't be putting up with it if I was getting better offers from somewhere else.
Well, that's like he's made no secret that he wants to go over to NASCAR at some stage. I think he wants to tick another couple of championships off first and a Bathurst or two along the way. But if they keep throwing this sort of stuff out, then he could just turn around at the end of his contract, whether it be this year or next year, and just say, "No, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm going overseas now." Well, we see Chaz Mostert has a fairly firm offer to join the BMW T3 team, like the worldwide one that travels the world, a big outfit that do all of these various endurance races and stuff. So he could quite easily turn around and say, "No, I'm out of here." For me, I'm not worried about the drivers so much as the fans. Like, it's the without trying to sound like a whinging Ford fan, but we haven't. We're fairly even on championships. I think Holden, it might be a couple either way still, but overall race wins. Like, going back to the start of the Australian Touring Car Championship, Holden had nearly 300 race wins on Ford.
Yeah.
You look at Bathurst, we're barely into double figures. Like, Holden had a 7-year streak a while ago that was only broken by Lowndes and Whincup, oddly, in a 888 Falcon. But Holden again is on a decent little winning streak. Like, 2014 was our last Bathurst win.
Yeah.
So we've gone 15, 16, 17, 18. So 4 in a row that we've done there. Like, it's so, like, again, you can always, there's many arguments to battle against that. Like, drivers that have stuffed up, haven't had the best package, rah. I wouldn't say that it's an unfair advantage either way to Holden, but just as overall, we've always felt the underdogs in the sport as Ford fans. We're happy to carry that underdog status. We're happy to be the team that doesn't have the most fans. Like, we know there's more Holden fans out there, but we're happy to carry that underdog tag. But when we do a better job, and they suddenly go, "No, we can't have that," and shut it down, that's when we blow up more about it, because it's like we've done a better job now. Why is this bad? And obviously it is. And so my worry is that Ford fans will walk away with you don't want to see. I don't think Ford's going to go anywhere as a manufacturer anytime soon. They've invested too much time and money into bringing the Mustang back, but there's nothing to say that in 4 or 5 years they don't turn around and say, hey, you know, because of we bought in a good car, it keeps on getting changed and this, that, and the other. So we're out again. Then and what do? How do they attract more manufacturers? Like, you know, if you had a Kia or Mercedes or Jaguar or whoever out there that was half contemplating joining Supercars, and then they see that, you know, oh, hang on, the Mustangs just entered the sport and they've already made changes because it's too fast. Why would we want to go in there? Because then they could enter, you know, Mercedes could enter a car next year, be smashing everyone, and it's up. And yeah, then they make changes to it. Then what incentive is that for a new manufacturer to enter the sport?
Yeah.
And that's what they've been wanting for years, is more manufacturers. And so it's just less incentive for them. Yeah, it's less incentive for Ford to stick around. That's going to change it in the short term. Hope not. But even, you know, Penske, there's every chance that, you know, I don't think he'll leave either. But, you know, if they keep finding ways to try and stop their team and their manufacturer from winning, you know, he could just turn around after 5 years and go, well, no, bugger it. You know, bugger Supercars, I'm out. You know, I think, like I said, I would have had no problems at the end of the year, but mid-season changes, I think, is just crazy.
Yeah, especially on aerodynamics. I'm just really hoping this isn't like the beginning of the end for Supercars, because if it just keeps spiraling like this, it's just really doesn't spell a very good future for Supercars, considering it would show zero appeal for future manufacturers, as you're saying. Obviously, we could talk about this. Oh, sorry, you go.
Oh, I was going to say, well, you've only got to look at posts that are put up about TCR at the moment, and they're going to have a few manufacturers. They're mostly customer cars. I don't think, certainly the Australian one, I don't think has an official factory team. But we're going to see Hyundai's, I think Volkswagen. There's 5 or 6 different manufacturers in there, and more can still come in. Like, it's just a case of buying the car.
Yeah.
When you see all the comments there that are on there, that people that can't wait for the series to start, because it's really genuine, good, close racing. The cars are all even, but some might have an advantage, some might not. But and they're not fast cars. They're fairly slow in comparison to other forms of racing. They're fairly slow, front wheel drive, but they're more than happy to bang wheels, and that's what we love. We all love as Australian motorsport fans. We love it when there's, rubbing is racing, as the old cliche goes.
Yeah.
And when you see it, there's so many fans out there that are excited about TCR because it doesn't have the politics that Supercars have.
Yeah.
And that's what drives fans nuts, is the politics of the sport. And we've, to go Roland Dane bashing again, it's like he's stood up and he's been flying the flag to changes to be made to the Mustang. Well, now he's got his wish. They've slowed him down, or that, I don't know how much it slows him down. We won't know until it'll probably still take 3 or 4 races to really work that out.
Yeah. On
how much it's slowed down, because we looked at Tasmania like it was 1 win apiece for Ford and Holden there. So it was never going to be the best guide to the centre of gravity changes. And then again with Phillip Island, it was definitely an aero track, so we had that advantage there. Perth is a bit. We got those S bends, but it's not as aero dependent as somewhere like Phillip Island.
Yeah.
So Ford might have gone there this weekend and not won races anyway. You don't know. Like I said, to make changes after 4 rounds, I think you have to at least see out an entire calendar.
Yeah.
To really know if there's that giant advantage. And as I said in that podcast a couple of shows ago, that if the Mustang won everything and won it, they dominated every race by 20 seconds, then I'll be more than happy to see changes. But up until that point, you just have to wait and see. And we haven't won every race by huge margins. So again, Penske probably could have walked away a little back on the weekend or last weekend, but Anton De Pasquale kept both those Penske cars fairly honest. I'm sure if McLaughlin really needed to, he probably could have pushed and got in front of Coulthard and probably driven away from him. Again, that would be down to him being the faster driver at the moment over pretty much the field. Then they could have pushed a bit harder. I think they kept them reined in a little bit, but we haven't seen them really walk away with race victories. Yes, they've been up pointy end for pretty much the entire year, but I don't think it's the same level that we've seen Mercedes dominate F1, where you know that they've just got so much more time up their sleeve. You'll see them build a 10, 15 second gap and just hold, and you know that they can, if they really needed to, they can switch it on and find another half a second in an instant if they need to. So I don't think they were ever that much faster.
Yeah.
And maybe they needed to get in a totally independent driver, someone who's never driven a supercar, and just send them loose around a couple of circuits in each one to really know how much faster they were.
Yeah. So obviously we could probably talk about this for hours, but just on a bit of a side note, if F1 does go downhill, we're going to become a touring car a podcast instead. So that's our backup plan anyway.
That's it. We'll just find another series. We'll be all about TCR. Might even end up we might go for Super Utes.
Yeah, but there's a little bit less politics there.
Yeah, I think so.
So
less politics, but more rollovers.
Yeah, it's we can have a rollover of the week segment or something like that.
There's gonna be plenty of nominations anyway.
Yeah, for sure. So that just about wraps up this little podcast. We just talked about one topic this time. We will have another podcast out next week. It's just we thought we should probably cover this very controversial topic just now. But anyway, thank you, Shane, for sharing your opinion this week.
No worries. It was good fun. I can't wait till Perth now.
Oh, that's going to be great fun.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye.